Welcome to Hannity. All right, tonight, the Democratic psychotic, mindless, anti-Trump rage, psychosis, sinking to new depths of depravity. What was a disastrous day for them as they pursue Trump every second, minute, hour of every day. They are hurting the country. They are ripping this country apart just for a cheap, baseless, political hit job. And after today's total BS, if you want to call it, impeachment hearing on Capitol Hill, your blood should be boiling, but you have the answer in 335 days. Now, instead of presenting actual evidence, Democrats thought we, the stupid, smelly, Trump-supporting Walmart shoppers that believe in God of America, need to be educated on the virtues of impeachment. So to educate we, the people, the masses of peoples, they hauled in three hyper-partisan, far-left, holier-than-thou, sanctimonious, self-righteous ivory tower law school professors to teach us about the Constitution. The really good news tonight is, to their credit, Republicans, they were united. They fought back in a big and effective way. Congressman Collins, Jordan, and, Matt Gaetz, rock stars today, along with others. And the GOP's sole witness, constitutional scholar Jonathan Turley. He literally, a Democrat, didn't vote for Trump, voted for Obama, also voted for the Clintons, ran circles around the liberal professor sitting next to him. Maybe that's because Turley's judgment wasn't clouded by, as he discussed, rage and hate and hysteria. The Democrats' three witnesses, on the other hand, they were clearly suffering from stage 4, a case of massive Trump derangement syndrome, disconnected from all truth and reality. UNC law professor, this guy Michael Gerhardt, worked for the Clintons in their administration, Al Gore's Senate campaign. A month ago, he authored an impassioned piece in The Atlantic praising the Schiff Show. And his fellow witnesses, Harvard law professor Noah Feldman, he's been looking for ways to impeach Trump since 2017. And just a few weeks after the president was sworn in, that guy, Feldman, argued that President Trump could be impeached for his use of the term fake news. I kid you not. There it is, the perfect ivory tower law professor, seemingly hating free speech, due process, presumption of innocence, and certainly cannot be counted on to seek truth and justice. Days later, he claimed that the president could be impeached because of an ad for Mar-a-Lago. And in March of 2017, not to be outdone, Feldman wrote that Trump could be impeached over his tweets about wiretapping. Believe it or not, Feldman's deranged anti-Trump bias just pales in comparison to the Democrats' third witness. Yes, ivory tower Stanford law professor Pamela Karlan is her name, a devout liberal. Actually, too extreme for even the Obama administration under Eric Holder. Donated thousands of dollars to Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama. And in June, wow, who's she supporting for president? Another $1,000 to that socialist. Yes, $94 trillion new Green Deal, Medicare for all, $52 trillion Elizabeth Warren. And Karlan once appeared at a podcast called Versus Trump, where she trashed conservatives. Her insane rage against all things Trump is so extreme, she refuses to even walk on the same side of the street, not making this up, as a Trump hotel. We've got the videotape. Let's go to it.
I came in from the airport yesterday, and I got off the bus from Dulles down at L'Enfant Plaza, and I walked up to the hotel. And as I was walking past what used to be the old post office building and is now the Trump Hotel, which I had to cross the street, of course. Are
you staying there?
God, no. Never. Never.
Wow. Another great witness. Imagine carrying around that much hatred, that much resentment and anger every day of your life. Pretty sad, pretty pathetic. Not good for the country. And frankly, House Democrats, they look really, really stupid. I didn't think you could outdo the Schiff Show, but they did, for hauling that psychotic individual before Congress. Case in point, at today's hearings, she made a pretty disgusting, repulsive joke about the president and Melania Trump's 13-year-old son. Watch this.
What comparisons, Professor Karlan, can we make between kings that the framers were afraid of and the president's conduct today?
So kings could do no wrong because the king's word was law. And contrary to what President Trump has said, Article 2 does not give him the power to do anything he wants. And I'll just give you one example that shows you the difference between him and a king, which is the Constitution says there can be no titles of nobility. So while the president can name his son Baron, he can't make him a baron.
Now, shortly after the professor's disgraceful remarks, the First Lady, Melania Trump, rightly responded with this powerful statement, quote, "A minor child deserves privacy and should be kept out of politics. Pamela Karlan, you should be ashamed of your very angry and obviously biased public pandering and using a child to do it." During the hearing, Congressman Matt Gaetz, on his game, also rebuked the Democrat star witness right to her face. Great moment for him. Take a look.
When you talk about how liberals want to be around each other and cluster and conservatives don't want to be around each other and so they have to spread out, it makes people, you may not see this from, like the ivory towers of your law school, but it makes actual people in this country feel like, excuse me, you don't get to interrupt me on this time. Now, let me also suggest that when you invoke the president's son's name here, when you try to make a little joke out of referencing Baron Trump, that does not lend credibility to your argument. It makes you look mean. It makes you look like you're attacking someone's family, the minor child of the President of the United States.
Keyword minor child. And Professor issued just a half-hearted, phony apology. But make no mistake, today was an unmitigated disaster for the Democrats. This was worse than the Schiff show. How stupid do they think we are? They bring in three liberal, mean-spirited, Trump-hating professors who live and work in their ivory towers, all trying to convince us that the president's alleged wrongdoing with no evidence. Not only do they have a clear established political bias and hatred, but they witnessed nothing. The only fact witness in this entire charade, we've only had one, testified that when he asked President Trump what he wanted from Ukraine, nothing. No quid pro quo, just be honorable. That's it. Those professors' opinions, they don't matter. Conjecture, that doesn't matter. Opinion witnesses, they don't matter. None of their testimony matters because the facts have not changed. And as Congressman Jim Jordan often points out, the facts are not on the Democrat side or the mob and the media side. Take a look.
Let me just cut to the chase. The reason it's been unfair is because the facts aren't on their side. The facts are on the president's side. 4 key facts: will not change, have not changed, will never change. We have the transcript. There was no quid pro quo in the transcript. The two guys on the call, President Trump and President Zelensky, both said no pressure, no pushing, no quid pro quo. The Ukrainians, third, didn't know that the aid was held up at the time of the phone call. And fourth, and most important, the Ukrainians never started, never promised to start, and never announced an investigation in the time that the aid was paused. Never once.
Those 4 facts, as Congressman Jordan always says, they never change. Irrefutable facts. On the Trump-Ukraine phone call in question, aid was never, ever once discussed. Now, add to that 5 subsequent high-level meetings, including one with the Vice President of the United States and the President of Ukraine. All the 5 with the President of Ukraine. This is after the phone call. Aid was never tied to anything at any one of the 5 meetings, never brought up in any way. And by the way, so what did Ukraine do before Trump released the money? Nothing. And they still got the money. That would be no quid pro or quo like Joe. And don't forget the transcripts of the president's phone call with Zelensky shows, remember he talks about, I want you to do us a favor, us, plural. And he mentioned it. He said, do us a favor. He was talking about both countries. The 2016 election interference by Ukraine, it had nothing to do with the Bidens. And by the way, everyone keeps saying conservatives believe that Ukraine was responsible for election interference in 2016 and not Russia. It's a conspiracy theory. No, I've never said that. We pointed out many times on this program, Russia is a hostile regime led by a hostile actor, Vladimir Putin, who we're not going to have more flexibility with ever. I have zero doubt they meddled in the 2016 elections. I'm certain they did. Devin Nunes was warning Obama in 2014 it would happen, but they did nothing. And by the way, yeah, look at the dirty Russian dossier that Hillary bought and paid for. According to the New York Times, very late in the game, likely Russian disinformation from the beginning. And yes, Russia interfered in our 2016 elections. They have done it before. They're going to try and do it again. Every indication is also, though, separate and apart, Ukraine interfered in our elections as well, and I have no doubt others. The January 11, 2017 Politico reports in detail. The Ukrainian court also ruled that their country interfered in our 2016 elections to help Hillary. It's not mutually exclusive. How many countries hacked into Hillary's server? They probably interfered also. And look at this. On the very same phone call, the president expressed concern. The brand new president of Ukraine was surrounding himself with some of the same corrupt officials as the last president. That's not smart. You better not do that. The president has reiterated many times he doesn't want to give away hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars without knowing who it is going to and how it is going to be used. That would be called due diligence. It is the president's sworn duty. And by the way, also faithfully executing the laws, finding out, oh, did they interfere? That's good for America to know so we can prevent it in the future. Thought Democrats cared about foreign election interference. They don't. And if they were actually on a fact-finding mission, they wouldn't have invited 3 known anti-Trump, left-wing, ivory tower lunatics to give their biased opinions. The Judiciary Committee's ranking member, Congressman Doug Collins, he summed it up perfectly. He was on his game today. He should have been announced as the next senator from Georgia. He wasn't. Thanks, Governor Kemp.
The chairman said it just a second ago, because we're scared of the elections next year. We're scared of the elections that we'll lose again. So we've got to do this now. The clock and the calendar are what's driving impeachment, not the facts. To in some way insinuate on a live mic with a lot of people listening that the founding fathers would have found President Trump guilty is just simply malpractice in this with these facts before us. That is just simply pandering to a camera. That is simply just not right. This is not an impeachment. This is just a simple railroad job. And today's is a waste of time, because this is where we're at. So I close today with this. It didn't start with Mueller. It didn't start with a phone call. You know where this started? It started with tears in Brooklyn in November 2016.
Great point. Because of these very real facts and the complete lack, there's no direct evidence, no testimony. Constitutional scholar Jonathan Turley, who is no supporter of President Trump, made clear he didn't vote for President Trump. He made the clear and compelling argument against the Democrats' sham impeachment coup attempt. Take a look.
I'm not a supporter of President Trump. I voted against him. My personal views of President Trump are as irrelevant to my impeachment testimony as they should be to your impeachment vote. This would be the first impeachment in history where there would be considerable debate and, in my view, not compelling evidence of the commission of a crime. Second is the abbreviated period of this investigation, which is problematic and puzzling. This is a facially incomplete and inadequate record in order to impeach a president.
Jonathan Turley's very calm, logical way, he took a sledgehammer to the left's phony narrative. And in one of the most powerful moments of the hearing, Turley flipped the script on the House Democrats. I'm sure they didn't like this moment. Take a look.
President Trump has gone to Congress, to the courts. He's allowed to do that. We have 3 branches, not 2. I can't emphasize this enough, and I'll say it just one more time. If you impeach a president, if you make a high crime and misdemeanor out of going to the courts, it is an abuse of power. It's your abuse of power. You're doing precisely what you're criticizing the president for doing. We have a 3rd branch that deals with conflicts of the other 2 branches. And what comes out of there and what you do with it is the very definition of legitimacy.
The first phase of the Democrats' impeachment coup attempt, the shift showed a disaster. Today, even a bigger disaster. And it's clear that the nutty Nadler circus won't be any better. It's worse. Joining